Yes, I'm Jennifer Green from the University of Melbourne. So I'm going to talk briefly, I hope, with images about the exhibition, the processes that went behind the exhibition of Emily Kam Kngwarray. So some of you will know it's currently on at the Tate Modern, and it was on at the NGA about a year ago. Shall I get my computer?
Potentially, is it great?
I've got an adapter. What do we do? Well, I want to show the pictures actually. Okay, so I'm going to read this in the interest of time. So, microphone. So, thanks for the invitation. This is a photo of the late and great Emily Kam Kngwarray, taken in about 1978. I knew her for about 20 years, and she was one of those amazing bush professors from the Central Desert. She was very talented, very strong, as you can see from the photo. One of those old professors, and she was a great artist. So the rather pompous title for my talk is taken, it's sort of based loosely on a recent claim that as an Aboriginal artist, quote, Emily has been overruled by the powers of anthropology, ethnology and linguistics. And this was in the Australian media 2 weekends ago. I'm going to argue very quickly the opposite, that in fact these interconnected disciplines have made and continue to make great contributions to the art sector. Neglect of these and what they have to offer is a great disservice to artists, their communities and their legacies. So, one of the interesting things that I have in common with the last two talks is an interest in old photos and yams, and you'll see why. So quickly, I'm going to talk about those topics you can see on the slide. The exhibition at the Tate Modern has been met by overwhelming positive acclaim by European audiences, and it's a credit to the artist, of course, to her communities, to the curatorial process, the Utopia Art Centre, and especially to the lead curator, Kelly Cole, who's here, and as part of the NGA exhibition that preceded her, to Hetty Perkins, and many others who worked together. It's a first for many reasons, one being that there is significant language content in the show and in its accompanying publications. So I want to focus quickly on the use of the modular language in the curatorial process and what the implications are for ongoing practice in this kind of enterprise, making exhibitions like this. I can't say enough about metadata, or we've been talking about it all day really, how crucial it is. We don't have access to archives without it. We need to think of the best ways to curate and create it, and that's what we're all trying to do. But I'm going to illustrate this with a very few particular examples, so not big picture really, but you can read big pictures into the details. First a good story, then a slightly difficult one. So this photo you can see on the right of the screen was taken about 50 years ago, and it connects to a current story, and everyone's really happy about the current story, where good curatorial practice can enhance metadata for old objects, old things. It shows Kngwarray with other country women singing and painted up for Awulia women's ceremonies around 1978. In the back, behind Kngwarray, there is a little girl in a white dress. You can see in the purple oval. And on the right-hand side, there's a photo of the community consultations that the NGA took to really talk about what was going in the catalogue and to identify the people in these old photos. In this image, you can see the little girl whose name is Melissa Kngwarray Long. She was the girl in the white dress, then probably at the age of about 3 or 4, clapping along behind her granny as she was singing. Melissa's now much older, and she danced at the opening ceremony for the Kngwarray exhibition at the NGA. She's on the right-hand side of the photo. And a quote that we recorded her talking about how she felt to see herself in this photo, and that's in the catalogue for the exhibition. So this is a story with a happy ending and good practice, because that thread of knowledge is linked from a little bit long time ago to more current practice. However, there's many examples in the various expositions about Ngwarray's art where captions for photos are incomplete, where the subjects of the camera gaze are not named. Sometimes there's only names of a curator and one other, or generalisations like female relatives of Emily Kam Kngwarray, or Utopia women, or artists, and so on. In this way, key people and their roles are made invisible for the future. So this is an old photo, and this is an example of a story that's a bit more puzzling. This photo was taken of women's evidence at the Utopia land claim hearing in 1979, and it appears in the front of the Land Commissioner's report. About 20 years later, it appears again in an art book with an addition to the caption, and I think we should. So, same photo, but different caption. Now this is really interesting because I don't think we know exactly how this happened, but I think my point is it's as important to know who's in photos as it is not to misidentify people in photos. So this calls for a bit more thought about, is that the artist? I don't think it is, and I think one of the reasons you would know that it probably isn't is because of the particular group that's represented in the photo, and Kngwarray wasn't from that particular group. She might have been there, but I doubt it. So this is the sort of thing that's important to think about when we're actually creating metadata, and also making it available so people can find it next time they make an art book. So the next topic which I'm going to talk about is the pencil yams. So people's names are plants and plants are people's names. Annulara, which you can see photos of here, is called, sometimes in English, the pencil yam. It's in Latin, it's called the Vigna lanceolata, and in Madura, it's called Annulara. So this plant was one of Emily Kngwarray's main themes. It's from her country, a place called Alalgra, and the pencil yam, Annulara, is really interesting from the botanical point of view because they flower and seed above the ground and below the ground. So you've got this sort of very interesting ecology, and if you talk to the Madura people from that country, and if you listen to what Kngwarray herself said, all of these observations are perhaps reflected they're certainly in language but also in art. It was this plant that she famously stated, "I am karma," and that quote's there, you might have seen it before. But if we want to understand pencil yams and their influence on this great artist, it's crucial, I think, that we understand what they are not. So a pencil yam is not a bush potato, so it's bad to be misled by very vague English translations for things that have specific words in the First Nations languages. So I think mixing up plants is in some cases the equivalent of mixing up people. And in this case, it's quite pertinent because Kngwarray's personal name was a plant, part of a plant. So in some publications, there is a mix-up with another plant, which is called a nacha, which is perhaps called a bush potato. The flowers are different. They're pink, not yellow. The edible bits are different. They come from different ancestral countries. They're of a different order, so in Whitefellas scientific classifications, they probably evolved a million years apart. In evolutionary terms, mixing up a mullara, pencil yam, and a nach, bush potato, is sort of the equivalent of not noticing the difference between dogs and rabbits. If you pay attention to what's said in the language, not rough glosses, it's all really clear, and what people are saying about ecology and country is much clearer. So the photo paired with Kngwarray's yam painting is of neither of these plants. It's not a bush potato and it's not a pencil yam. And I guess part of the curatorial process, and perhaps I drove Kelly and everyone else mad, is I really wanted to know if pencil yams make the earth crack up. And I don't think they do, but maybe they do a little bit, but they have a different kind of ecology. And I think it's important to be clear and accurate, if we can, about what these things are. So I think the ecological, ethno-ecological details matter, and we all make mistakes. You know, we have to do things in a hurry, or we're not really sure, or there's confusing information. Another example that's of a painting that's in the Tate show. If we make an assumption that the titles of works that are not in English are probably titles that Kngwarray, the artist, intended, they're a kind of key or a window into information perhaps about the motivation for her artworks. So unpacking these titles and sometimes modernising their spellings can be really useful. So this is an example of an older spelling from the Tate, from an older, I'm not sure the provenance of that spelling, and we modernised it for the Tate show, just because if you look for that title with a reasonable modern spelling, you can find it in a dictionary. You can learn more about the plant. So we can learn more about the plant and its habitat and how people collected it. And it might mean we reimagine, okay, I'll stop. I'll go to my end. So in conclusion, I think it's really good if there's fantastic resources about ecology and language, and it's great if people can use them. And I think that partnerships with artists, art centres, rangers, linguists, interconnected disciplines can be really exciting and productive, as they have been for the Tate show and the NGA show. And this is a matter of respect for Indigenous knowledge and care in the way it's represented to the outside world. Preserving Indigenous knowledge properly for futures requires accurate documentation in the first place. So I think one of the issues about some of these things is they then get regurgitated on Wikipedia and then people believe it, and suddenly you're talking about a different plant. So thank you.